What's up, guys? Sam Shaw, your founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today, I have Michael on with us. I'm really excited to talk to Michael just about his recent experience recruiting for summer 2023, which ended up being really successful. And I want to get him on here to kind of walk you guys through how he was able to get to where he is, and also just share whatever insights he might have with you guys. So with that said, Michael, I want to just thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you could start maybe just by introducing yourself briefly so that our audience can kind of just get a sense for who you are.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Michael, from New York City, go to school at Duke University, and there I study economics with a concentration in finance. Was not involved, honestly, in a ton of finance-related clubs at school. Was part of one club called am still part of one club called First Generation Investors, which is a little bit more of a tutoring service. But yeah, so I kind of knew I was interested in investment banking a little bit from my dad, who also spent a lot of his career in investment banking. And then just sort of at school, I knew I had an interest in business, kind of starting in high school, and that's what led me to pursue economics. And then hearing some older students and through some classes I took, decided it was the path for me. And I know we'll get into a little bit how I started with you, but eventually led me to Wall Street Mastermind, and ended up having a great result.
Awesome, man. So I guess, before we kind of dive into everything, I like to start backwards. So what was the end result of like your recruiting process? Like, where did you get offers from?
Yeah, so I had an offer from Barclays and an offer from Bank of America, both in New York City, and both generalist with group placement later. And I ended up taking the Bank of America offer.
Got it. Okay. And how did you kind of like make that decision? Because those are obviously both very good offers, both bulge bracket banks. And so like what went into the, I guess, decision-making process there?
Yeah, honestly, it was kind of very two different stories. Barclays, I had done more so the traditional, like really grind the networking, kind of get my foot in the door, make some connections that, some good networking calls and people that kind of ended up pushing for me.
Yeah.
So that was sort of how I had the Barclays side. So kind of going into after receiving the offer, I kind of already had a feel for the people and what I liked about it, and was really excited about it. And then honestly, Bank of America kind of came out of nowhere. I was very unsuccessful networking there. I'd sent tons of emails to Duke alumni and honestly didn't even connect with anyone beforehand. Got the hire view, and then went straight to the super day from the hire view, which was pretty surprising. Okay. And then I had my super day actually the day after I got my Barclays offer. And that was actually my first in-person interview in New York. All my others have been virtual. And I think, I was a little skeptical going in, not having really any connections there. Yeah. But I think having the offer obviously reduces a lot of the nerves. And I think if you're nervous, a lot of the times you're not gonna get the job. And I think that really helped me in that process. So was honestly a little surprised and lucky with that one. But and then deciding afterwards, honestly, my interviewers were great. They really took an interest and had a lot of people reach out to me. So I kind of spent an entire week and a half after that networking at Bank of America. Really honestly enjoyed all my conversations and ended up choosing that.
So they were all willing to network with you once you got the offer.
Exactly.
Not before you got the offer. Okay, got it. Yeah, because then at that point they were in sell mode, right? And so
yep. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, makes sense. So they came out last minute, kind of like won you over. That's pretty cool. I guess let's go back to kind of the beginning then, because I know you didn't join Wall Street Mastermind until like late February of your sophomore year, which is like,
yeah,
I would say relatively late for someone who's trying to recruit for like bulge bracket or elite boutique banks, right? And so like up to that point, I guess, what had you already done prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind, if anything? Like, what were you doing to kind of like work towards recruiting? Or was it like you had just decided you wanted to recruit for banking at that point and then you joined Wall Street Mastermind right away?
Yeah, honestly, I think for me, I definitely didn't have a prior knowledge of how really how early the timeline was.
Hmm.
I always kind of had it in the back of my mind as a possible path for me. And then kind of like you're right, it was really early in 2022 this year when I kind of really narrowed it down and was like, all right, if I want to do this, I've got to kind of decide soon. I'd also considered consulting, try to figure out which one I wanted. And, I think part of it being the earliest process also drove me to pursue it because I didn't want to miss out, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
But so beforehand, really, I was doing a little research on my own, learning about the timeline, learning a little bit about some of the technicals. But I really didn't have any exposure to the process itself and how much it kind of took to actually go through.
Yeah.
And I was referred to you by the older student at Duke that I knew. And so looked into the program a little bit. He spoke very highly of it also. And that's sort of what led me to you and kind of taking it, I guess, the whole process a little bit more seriously.
Gotcha. I'm trying to remember. Was that Kyle or who was it?
It was Tyler.
Oh, it's Tyler. Okay. Yeah. We have a couple of students at Duke that refer a lot of people to us. So that and we always, I mean, we love that because tells us that that we're doing a good job for them. So that's awesome. So okay, so you came to us. And so up until that point, then it sounds like you maybe study a little bit of technicals, and that was about it. You hadn't really done much else, right? And
Well,
here's
yeah.
like-
So
yeah.
oh yeah. No, I would say so obviously Duke doesn't have an undergraduate business program. So I'd taken really one class that sort of introduced me to what even a DCF was, what the financial statements were.
Yeah.
Hadn't retained a ton of it, honestly, because I wish I got into it thinking that's what I wanted to do and would have, I guess, obviously spent a lot more time on it. But
Yeah.
but yeah, honestly, I had a very, very limited information set.
Gotcha. Okay, so then basically you came in like relatively green then, like you were almost starting from like the beginning, basically. You're like starting from scratch in terms of like recruiting prep, in terms of networking, in terms of interview prep, like basically just having to do everything from the beginning. Okay, got it. So obviously, well, the next question I was going to ask was like, why did you decide to join Walsh Mastermind? You kind of sort of already mentioned that, which is, Tyler referred you to us, which is awesome. I guess like maybe a more interesting question is, like you mentioned earlier, obviously your dad worked in banking himself as well, right? So like I think that's kind of rare because most students who want to get into investment banking, their parents most likely did not work in banking. And so like, I think like the natural question that people might have is like, why not just have your dad help you with recruiting, or like why even join something like this? Why not just like go to your dad for advice and he could probably just teach you everything you need to know, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. I think, well, first of all, he was definitely great in sort of macro advice throughout the whole process for sure. But I think he's obviously much older, he started in investment banking and then went to the buy side for a long time. And then recently kind of came back to banking. But I think largely he is kind of out of touch with how the process has changed and how it really operates these days. He's not really involved in recruiting. So he's not, he sort of doesn't have that more in-depth knowledge of the process itself.
Yeah.
But again, just sort of his knowledge of and kind of teaching me about the job itself definitely helped. Some friends he had known that I connected with to learn about if I was interested in IB or not. It was really helpful. But I think for me also, the main part of it was kind of wanting to do it on my own.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to have my career, I guess, connected to his at all. So I kind of nixed that pretty early on. And I think he would feel the same. Not connected, but you know what I mean? Like kind of forge my own path.
Right.
And so I think that's what sort of led me to this. And he was very supportive of honestly a program and teaching me this stuff. Cause like I said, he also knew I just didn't have the background that a lot of kids do, learning a lot of this stuff at school.
Yeah.
So that's kind of really one of the main reasons for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember your dad saying something similar of like just like whatever advice you needed probably be better coming from someone else than it was like coming from him or something like that, right? Like I vaguely remember that. And I have 2 kids now, and I kind of understand that. It's like sometimes like if you want to give your own kids advice, like it doesn't come out the same when it's coming from your own parents, right? So but okay, no, that makes sense. Like I think I think, you know, you're actually not the first person who's done our program whose parents have been investment makers. We probably have like a handful of those. And it's always cool for me personally when I get like investment bankers that have worked in the industry for a long time that like I feel like they're entrusting me with also like getting their children into investment banking, which is kind of awesome. So but okay, so you came into Wall Street Mastermind and then you know, obviously you got your offer I want to say what, like in June, right? Or actually July, I guess.
So I got both offers. Wait, because I ended up getting the Bank of America offer actually the same day as the Super Day. So I
Yeah.
got both, I think, in the first week of July.
Okay. So got both offers first week of July. So that's like March, April, May, June. So you like a little over 4 months after you joined Wall Street Mastermind, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about those 4+ months. Like, what did you do after you came into Wall Street Mastermind? Like, what do you feel like helped you the most, I guess? And then also, obviously, like 4 months is not a really long time to kind of be starting from the beginning and having to do everything, right? And so, like, can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about just like what you found to be most helpful in terms of accelerating that process for you? And then also, like, I think question that a lot of people typically have from the outside looking in is like, what's the difference? Like, what's the difference between like what you did in the program versus what you probably could have just done on your own, or maybe what you just done if you just, I don't know, went to your dad or whatever, right? Like, is there any difference, I guess?
Mhm. Yeah, honestly, I think starting off, number one, I would say the biggest thing I got out of the program, honestly, was building my resume. I think that was a really, really invaluable thing that I'm gonna take with me like throughout my kind of career, and just building that and learning the words to say,
Yeah,
like some of those keywords, how to phrase things, just making it look professional, because you know the resume is obviously one of the most important things in recruiting.
yeah,
So I think that pretty early on, starting with that as the first thing, really. And you know, kind of going from there, I think the behaviorals modules in particular was really helpful in the beginning because the networking calls. Honestly, so once I'd sort of started with the program, started a little bit, just some background, you know, what is investment banking, some of like the three statements, just trying to refresh myself on those. And then I actually I went through some personal stuff sort of in the beginning of March.
mm,
And honestly, I kind of lost focus for a few weeks, which I think really set me back. So I really didn't start kind of grinding again, I guess I would say, until end of March.
okay,
Um, and so from there on, I think the biggest thing was number one, resume, then the networking, the tracker, super helpful. Just learning what to say in calls, how to reach out, sort of the email templates for sure, then kind of personalizing that to myself and my situation. And honestly, the networking in the beginning for me also, I was a little bit lazy with, to be honest, and really kind of getting the numbers up. And I didn't have the success I was looking for. And, you know, we had a couple calls too, just kind of checking in and being like, you know, what can I do differently? And I think really in May is when I started, you know, on LinkedIn, finding the people, sending out the emails, having a ton of calls. And then, you know, from there on, I think the technicals kind of came with time. I think those were obviously important, but I think obviously getting the foot in the door was
yeah,
more important beforehand.
yeah,
And I would say honestly, with the technicals, at that point, just with everything going on, I probably didn't go through as many videos as I should have. That was sort of one thing I regret doing, and I would suggest people definitely do because they are very, very helpful.
yeah,
Um, but I think sort of really the structure of the program itself, I think order it gets you to do things in, was really helpful for me, especially with, like we've been saying, the limited timeline I had from when I started. So yeah, that was honestly one of the biggest things for me.
got it. Okay. So I actually didn't even realize that you were going through some stuff in March. So even though you started end of February, you technically really started end of March. So it wasn't even like 4 months. You kind of really had maybe 3 months. And so it sounds like the biggest thing for you is just how everything was really organized, everything's in one place, and it just allowed you to kind of like progress through all the things you needed to do without having to like waste too much time, kind of like
Mhm.
doing trial and error and figuring things out, and because you just didn't have time for that.
Yeah,
Basically.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think part of it for me too is the reason I got a little set back is I actually had gotten a first round from Piper Sandler in April. I applied like right at the beginning of April before their thing closed, or maybe it was end of March. And I ended up actually getting that interview, just not even having networked. And I think that kind of put a bad first impression in my mind in terms of like how important networking really was,
Hmm.
which was definitely a mistake. I can definitely say that now. But and that interview obviously just did not go well, and that was my first interview too, which is kind of expected, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I think another mistake I made, and this was just me, I don't know why I did this looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, is I felt like I needed to have a good networking connection before I applied somewhere. So
Hmm.
I honestly didn't send most of my applications until like May 12th, which is really, really late.
Hmm.
Um, so that's something I think looking back on also, I really sort of fumbled the bag with. Um, but again, I think what that really highlights is I made a lot of mistakes, and I think the structure of the program really kind of helped me get back on track at each of those points.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty crazy because, I would say typically when it comes to investment banking recruiting, I feel like the margin for error is like pretty small, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like you had some setbacks, you had some mistakes, but then you were also able to kind of recover from it, which honestly is pretty amazing. Um, I guess like, would you say it kind of feels like things weren't going that well for you initially, and then at some point you hit like an inflection point, or there was kind of like a turning point where things started to turn around and you start to network
Yeah.
and get more results. Like what what caused that, I guess? Or like was there something in particular that you did or that you changed which which like allowed you to like start becoming more successful? Because like I typically always ask everyone I interview for these, like, what's one piece of advice that you have for people that are recruiting? And I feel like this is probably like the one piece of advice that did it for you. So like, what is that? If you can put your finger on it.
Look, I think the one piece of advice is definitely start early. I think that's what I learned through this. And I think you're right. There was a point where I saw a lot of other people getting offers. Shops were kind of finishing up their process. Obviously, those were more elite boutiques in the beginning. Um, but I was like, and I think also just starting in early May, I was done with school. I had a lot less on my plate. And I was like, if I really want this, I got to start grinding for this every day. Um, I had a lot more time, obviously. So I spent honestly from the beginning of May on, I really just did not stop until I got the offers. Um, and I think obviously with a little bit more of a limited pool of firms, I was a little bit more nervous.
Mm,
I think again, Duke has a great alumni network, and I think that helped a lot as well. In meeting people and reaching out to people. But I would say the biggest thing I learned through the whole process is reps. I think starting as early as possible, even applying to places you might not want to be at just to get interview experience. And obviously the mock interviews do help, but I would say they help really refine your answers. They don't give you the experience of being nervous in an interview. So I think you need both. Even networking calls, just doing it early and getting reps, because not every call is going to go good. And once I got a rhythm of how to talk in a call, how to start a call, how to get what I wanted out of the call, it was so much easier.
yeah.
And I genuinely, every single interview got better and better. And what I also learned is that if you like mess up a question interview, like in real time in an interview, you will never forget the real answer. And I definitely learned that. I ended up having, I really only proceeded through the process with 5 banks, I would say. And I had one super day before those 2 bulge bracket super days. And that definitely did not go as well as I thought it, or I hoped it would. And I think it was definitely the nerves. And I think if you're too nervous, you're really not gonna get the job. And that comes with, having that interview experience.
Yeah.
So that's honestly the biggest thing. Starting early, try to get as many reps as you can, just doing as much as you can.
Gotcha. So basically you had interviews with 5 firms, you moved to 3 super days and you got 2 offers basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Not including high reviews.
not including high reviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, you got 5 like real interviews basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's also why I always tell people is like, I mean, you need to try to get more than just like 1 or 2 interviews, because a lot of times like the first 1 or 2 interview might not go as well as you want them to go. And also sometimes, even if the interview does go well, like what you have to understand is the bulge bracket banks that we're talking about, like their acceptance rates are extremely low. Like,
Yeah.
like, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all these firms, like their acceptance rate can be, anywhere from 1 to 2%, and something like sometimes like even the 1.5 for Goldman Sachs and 1.7 for JP Morgan. I think that like includes all of like middle office and back office. It's like everything. If you're only talking about front office roles, it's probably even lower than that. And my point is this, which is we've also had students who have actually gone to the interview and they actually did really well, and then they still didn't get the offer. And then when they ask for feedback afterwards, their interviewers actually tell them like, no, like you did really well. We just only had so many offers. And so like my point is, if you only have like 1 shot or 2 shots, sometimes like even through no fault of your own, just like you were good, but like there were so many other people that were just like maybe slightly better, and that might still not be good enough, right? So you got to give yourself enough opportunities and enough at bats. Like all you need is obviously 1 offer.
Yeah.
You just can't guarantee like which firm that offer is going to come from, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think honestly, I think networking in and of itself is kind of a microcosm for the whole process. Like you can send out as many emails as you want trying, but bankers only can talk to so many people in a day. And I don't know, they'll kind of choose based off their resume, based off your email, who they're going to talk to. And I think same thing, you interview at as many places as you can. Hopefully one works out, but it's kind of the same thing. You can't, even if like you said, even if it goes great. And I kind of learned this too. Because there were some that I did think went really well, but you're right. Obviously, you don't know who else is interviewing, and they could have 5 good candidates, but only have 1 spot.
Right, for sure, absolutely. It's really good advice. So look, guys, if you're, listening to this or watching this, and like you're finding yourself maybe in a similar situation, right? Maybe you're just realizing you want to do investment banking. You're starting the process a little bit on the later side. There's still firms out there that are recruiting, but you don't have a lot of time, and you're just looking for like the most efficient way to go about it, to like, remove all the trial and error. I mean, you still have to put in the hard work and you're willing to do that, but like you want some guidance on like what to do, what not to do, and like just how to do it right the first time and get the best results possible to give yourself the best chance of having, multiple opportunities, multiple shots at securing at least 1 offer. Then I want to invite you to, reach out, book a call with our team. In fact, what we're doing now is before you even talk to our team, we'll actually let you talk to, one of our successful alums from our programs. Basically, just an upperclassman who's already gone through the process. Someone like Michael, not Michael specifically, but like someone like Michael who's already gone through the process. And you can just have basically just like a virtual coffee chat with them. Just like a typical networking call that you will have with someone who's already working banking. You can ask them whatever you want. You can ask them for recruiting advice. You can ask them about how they got their offers. You can ask them about the program if you want. Whatever it is that you want to know. And then once you've had that conversation, if you still are interested in working with us, because we're by application only, like if you're still interested, they can help you set up a call with our team, right? If you're not interested, no worries. Then you just get a free networking call and get some advice and, go on your way, right? So if you're interested in doing that, you can book this free virtual coffee chat by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you and hopefully helping you. All right. So with that said, Michael, I want to thank you for taking time to share your experience with us, and obviously congratulate you again on 2 really, really good offers in a very short amount of time. And I think you made a great choice. I would have picked probably Bank of America as well, but like both are great firms. Regardless, and I look forward to seeing all the success that you have ahead of you, this upcoming summer, but also beyond that as well for full time and so on. So yeah, man, it's if you ever need anything else, whether it's recruiting or something else, don't be a stranger, and definitely feel free to reach out anytime. So
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right, guys. So that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna wrap it up here and we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. All right, talk soon.